So another important EC2 concept is security groups. So security groups is very important for inbound and outbound traffic. So in EC2, we use virtual firewall to control incoming and outgoing traffic to and from AWS resources for EC2 instance and databases, etc. So in AWS, we are using virtual firewall. Firewall is nothing but it restricts the inbound and outbound traffic according to our configuration we made. And it also provides additional layer of security, that is defense in depth. So like whenever we try to connect to EC2 instance, we are not able to access the Apache server. So for that, we have open a security groups, and then we add a new rule over the inbound traffic. So in order to access the HTTP web page, so we need to configure the inbound and outbound rules according to our requirements. So this is about the security groups. Security group rules. Default deny. If there are no rules configured, no outbound and inbound rules is allowed. So like we have seen earlier that there are no rules for inbound traffic, so that we are not able to access the Apache server. But when you try to add a rule, then we are able to access that web page. So that is about default deny. So allow rules only. This means that whatever rules we have configured, only that coding rules, only the traffic is allowed. Other than that, other traffic is not allowed. So there are separate rules for both inbound traffic as well as for outbound traffic. These are all about the security group rules. So security key pairs. So key pairs, we have two key pairs, which is one public and private key. So EC2 uses public key cryptography for protecting login credentials. So the public key is stored by the AWS. Key pair. So as we said, the key pair of two types, public key and a private key. The public key is stored in EC2 instance, that is AWS stores the public key, whereas the private key is stored by the customer. So customer need to store the private key in order to access the EC2 instance. So these are all about the key pairs. EC2 IP addresses. Basically, there are two type of IP addresses, public and private. Public IP addresses are internet addressable, means we can able to access that IP address anywhere from the world. Whereas the private address are internal to a corporate network only, which cannot be accessed from the internet. So no two resources can have the same public address. Yes, no two resources can have the same public address, but two different corporate networks can have the same private IP addresses. So all EC2 instances are assigned private IP addresses. Yes, we can see that while we are creating EC2, we can see that IPv4 public address, IPv4 private address, both are assigned by EC2. So one point to remember is that whenever we stop an EC2 instance, the public IP address is lost. So if we want an constant IP address, we need to use an Elastic IP addresses. So let us consider scenario. How do you get a constant public IP address for an EC2 instance? So the quick and dirty way is to use an Elastic IP. So as we said earlier that whenever we start an EC2 instance, whatever the public IP address that has been assigned earlier will be lost. So again, when we start an EC2 instance again, a new public IP address get allocated. So in order to get a constant public IP address, we use Elastic IP address. Elastic IP can be switched to another EC2 instance within the same region. Yes, for example, if you have two instances in a region, we can switch those Elastic IP between those two instances. and Elastic IP remains attached even if you stop the instance. You have to manually detach it. For example, if if you are not using an EC2 and we have stopped that EC2 instance, but the Elastic IP remains attached to it even though we have stopped the instance. But whenever we want to remove that Elastic IP, we have to manually detach it. So the most important point to remember is that you are charged for an Elastic IP when you are not using it. So we should make sure that we use explicitly release an IP when we are not using it. So it means that whenever we are not using an Elastic IP address, we are going to charge for that. So whenever we are not using an Elastic IP, make sure we need to release that IP address in order to save the money. So that is about Elastic IP.